Welcome back to MindScience, episode 33. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a topic that is at the very heart of all of the issues facing us as a collective right now. And I can't speak for what exactly has been going on all around the world, but here in America, this is an issue that was really brought to the surface in full 3D Technicolor in 2020. That issue is not social justice or political corruption or voter fraud, but is actually the cause of all of these issues. That issue is victimization. And there's different ideas about what the word victimization means, but in this video, we're going to be talking about victimization exclusively as a mindset. Because as bad as the coronavirus was in America, it's my opinion that it pales in comparison to the devastation and destruction that the virus of victimization has caused in our country. Before we go any further, I'd like to say that I am not a Republican or a Democrat, and politics is not an area of interest for me. My area of interest is in the mind and understanding how it works. So we're going to be taking a deep look into the science of victimization and seeing how it's actually a sneaky and subtle form of pride. We're going to discover where it arises from and what the cure for it is. Because if we're going to save our country from driving off the cliff that we're speeding towards, we're going to have to figure out how to heal this disease of victimization that has so deeply infected our collective consciousness. It's no secret that the US is more divided right now than at any point in our nation's history. And we could blame the two-party system for this, but I believe that it's really just a symptom of a deeper issue. The real reason we've become increasingly divided is because nobody agrees on who the victim is and who the victimizer is. The left claims that they are victims of oppression from the right, and the right claims that they are victims of oppression from the left. But they both do and say the exact same things about one another, and they are truly two sides of the same coin, although neither side wants to admit it. The vast majority of people don't even choose their political party anymore based on the actual ideas and policies that it espouses, but simply on the basis of whichever side they believe are the good guys and which side are the bad guys. Obviously, the side that I choose are the good guys, and obviously, the other side are the bad guys. The original thought of the victim mindset is, you are my enemy. And this is exactly the way that our politics plays out. Whichever side holds the power bullies the other evil side for 4 to 8 years, which eventually strengthens the other side to turn out in droves at the voting booths so they can take the power back and become twice the villain that their enemy was to them. And without even realizing it, thou hast become that which thou loathed. So this is the first big point I'd like to make in this video. Victimization actually creates the very thing that it seeks to defend against, on the simple fact that perception is creation. You always become what you behold. It should be obvious that nobody ever believes that they're the victimizer. They simply believe that they're giving this person exactly what they deserve. If they didn't believe the person deserved it, they wouldn't do it. That's how the mind works. They believe that they're bringing some kind of balance back to the scales of justice. So this is why trying to tell somebody that they're your oppressor doesn't work. Everybody is the hero in their own mind, doing exactly what they believe is right. Even the white supremacists of America's dark days of segregation didn't believe that they were the bad guys. They felt victimized by believing that African Americans were changing their country and their culture, bringing in new values and viewpoints, and threatening their way of life in white America. So because they felt like the victims, They became the victimizers. And that should serve as a wake-up call to everyone. The victim always becomes the victimizer. Hurting people hurt people. So if you cannot heal and forgive, then you will eventually become that which you hate. So believing that you are anyone's victim will make you blind to your own immorality. And as we've seen this year, even things like hatred, death threats, and physical violence will become justified. So how does the mind begin creating this illusion of victimization? Let's take a closer look. The ego believes that you are a body. I am the body is the ego's religion. This belief goes unquestioned and uninvestigated by 99% of people. So whatever the makeup of the body is becomes the person's entire sense of self. Male or female, white or black, that is what the ego believes that you are. Whatever happens to the body, the ego says, that happened to me. If someone doesn't see me how I see myself, that becomes an attack on who I am. But the ego is not your true sense of self. The ego is simply the mental activity of identifying. Whatever the ego identifies with makes up this false sense of self. But A Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists, and herein lies the peace of God. The ego does not know what it is, so whenever a self-image feels threatened, whether by physical force or mere words and opinions, the ego is triggered into full fight or flight mode. Therefore, whatever triggers you is a symptom of a mistaken identity. You have identified yourself as something you are not. Any form you identify with will only weaken you and make you insecure. Whether you identify with your race, gender, sexual orientation, your talents, or the roles you play, the ego needs to constantly protect and reinforce its identities. But the paradox is, an identity cannot be attacked because it isn't real. An identity is just an idea in the mind. It does not exist in reality. And so this is the ego's mission statement. My identity creates my reality. Victimization is the ego's belief that its mental self-image has been fractured or damaged. More than anything, the ego wants to be special. It does not care what type of special that it is. It is just as happy to be special for being the greatest as it is for being the lowest. Victimization is the ego's secret way of feeling special, even in defeat. The ego says, nobody has been treated as badly as me. I am the greatest victim of all. So all of your reality becomes reduced to me and my sad story. So the first rule of victimization is that before you defend yourself against the words or opinions of another, you must have first perceived yourself as weak and fragile. For this reason, A Course in Miracles says, what is true needs no defense and offers none. Anything that needs defense you do not want, for anything that needs defense will weaken you. So I hope that it's clear by now that we're not talking about physical victimization, but mental victimization. There really is no such thing as physical victimization because, again, victimization is a mindset. And this is why we all love that one scene in every action movie ever made where the hero is tied up to a metal chair being beaten by the bad guys, and the villain leans in close and grabs him by the jaw and gives him one last chance to save his own life if he only gives up his power in some way. And the hero, although being in a seemingly very victimized position, spits in the villain's face and says, I'll never bow to you. Oh, we get goosebumps, we stand, we cheer, we applaud. Why? Because it speaks to a deep, primordial truth within all of us that nobody can take your power away from you. No matter what anyone does to you or how they treat you, you are never their victim unless you believe so. That is empowerment. The harder I fight against someone's opinion of me, the more I strengthen it, because you don't attack what you're not threatened by. So if I get defensive and angry, then I must secretly be afraid that what you're saying about me might actually be true. So a disempowered person will always shift into the victim role, because truthfully, that's exactly how they want to see themselves. Now, nobody consciously wants to be a victim, but subconsciously, they do. Because the ego believes that other people pitying me and feeling bad for me gives me some kind of specialness or value in the world. And the ego will even try to infect other people with this mental illness by defending and even enhancing the victimization of others as a secret means of validating its own victimhood. The more evidence the ego can gather for its own victimization, the better. So it will see that evidence whether or not it's really there. And of course, it never actually is. So if you recognize that you've fallen into this trap that all of us have at one point or another, the only question to ask yourself is, do I want to see myself as weak and fragile? Do I want to believe that they took my power from me when I could instead believe that they haven't? Instead of being offended by what that person says or thinks about me, I could just recognize that they are speaking from a place of weakness and pain. This really is Chemistry 101. If I return the same energy, I become just like them. If I return the opposite energy, I depolarize them. Returning kindness for attack is always the way to defeat your oppressor, because you no longer fit into the role that they want you to play. I'll give you a quick example of this. I was a really late bloomer as a kid, so I often got teased and picked on for that. But there was this one kid, my 8th grade year, named Marcus, who did everything he could to bully me and humiliate me at every opportunity. This kid made every day of the first semester of 8th grade a living nightmare. And one day I was reading the passage where Jesus says, "Do not repay evil for evil, but overcome evil with good." Those words struck a chord in me. And so from that moment forward, I decided that I was going to pretend like Marcus was my best friend. I started telling him that his shoes were cool, his backpack was cool. I laughed at all of his jokes about me and never acted like I was offended in the slightest, even though I was. Within a few months, Marcus and I became actual friends. We even ended up eating lunch together. All because I refused to see myself as his victim, which meant he could no longer see himself as my victimizer. This is the only way to end the cycle of victimization. And this is exactly what Dr. Martin Luther King demonstrated in the Civil Rights era. By returning love for hate and peace for violence, he showed his opposition. We are not who you think we are, and we are coming from a higher state of consciousness. The whole nation saw this contrast and quickly stood up behind his movement. And without a single violent riot or protest, Martin Luther King brought an end to segregation in America. This is exactly the mentality that we must adopt today. You are not your body. You are not your race, your gender, your sexual orientation. You are not what has happened to you, and you are not the things that you've done in the past. Identifying with any of those things will lead to a life of suffering and misery, and there is no exception to this. If you identify with anything, you will become a victim to it. So you may be wondering, if I am not any of those things, then who am I? Your true identity is I am. This is, in fact, the identity of the universe itself. I am is the point of awareness, the observer in quantum mechanics. None of us are truly different from one another. We are each having different experiences, experiencing different bodies, but at our core, we are all one. We are all the universe itself, appearing as different shapes and forms. But every shape and form in the universe knows itself as I. For the first few years of your life, you had no clue if you were male or female, black or white, gay or straight. All you knew was I am. Nobody taught this to you because it is what you are. In order to experience anything, you must first know I am. Otherwise, who would an experience happen to? I am is the only thing about you which has never changed. The same I you referred to as a child is the same I you refer to now. I am is God appearing, the eyes of the universe looking at itself. And to know yourself as the pure awareness I am is the source of all empowerment, peace of mind, and love. When you know yourself as that, you see it in everyone else. There is only one life, one energy, one being in the universe. Who is that life, that energy, that being? I am. We are more afraid of our light than of our darkness. What we are most afraid of is that we've been living like poor beggars when all along we are divine royalty. Only you can discover who you are, and that is where empowerment begins. Claiming yourself to be a victim does not make you morally virtuous or powerful. It is a cheap, cardboard imitation of true empowerment. It keeps you divided from reality and trapped in suffering. Victimization is the true virus that has infected our nation, and the cure is never going to be found in agreeing on who the real victims are, but in agreeing that we are all one and valuable beyond measure. We have to stop the hatred, the violence, and the dissension between one another. We are insane, and only love can heal us. We cannot make up for the sins of yesterday with sins today. You can't put out a fire with more fire. You do not end war by hating it, but only by loving peace. We will not defeat injustices by hating what is evil, but only by loving what is good. Evil wants you to hate, to make you like itself. But truth does not fight or hate what is false. It merely stands firm and allows the false to be seen for the illusion that it is. Telling people that they are victims is not loving, it is attacking them. We can have compassion on those who suffer without seeing them as victims. We can speak truth to power in love. We can stand against oppression in peace by simply refusing to give it our power. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and we have seen enough of the fruits of victimization in our country to know beyond any doubt that it is a poisonous tree. The time has come for us to recognize that victimization is not empowerment. Being so fragile that mere words and opinions can shatter you is not strength. It is self-created weakness. An oppressor needs somebody to oppress. It cannot exist alone. So by refusing to see yourself as someone's victim, you destroy the victimizer in turn. Even the weakest person can hate their enemy, but few are they who can return love for hate and kindness for attack. By returning evil for evil, you declare to your oppressor, I am just like you. The only way to put out the fires of hatred is with the healing waters of love. As the great Martin Luther King Jr. once said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So, victimization comes to an end the moment you recognize that allowing anyone to disturb my peace is simply to make myself their prisoner. It is always about self-perception, and the only one that you need is I am. Only that is empowerment, and only empowerment is freedom.